How can data leaders harness the power of generative AI to drive productivity without disrupting the client experience? And how can they foster stronger data literacy skills, not just in the data organization, but throughout the entire workforce? In this episode of Data Humanized, we'll explore how Gen AI can transform the way enterprises operate by enabling employees with Fernando Schwartz, the Vice President of Data Science and Machine Learning at ADP. Please enjoy my conversation with Fernando. Welcome to Data Humanized, presented by Correlation One. In each episode, we bring you the unique perspective of enterprise leaders at the intersection of technology and humanity who are leading cultural transformation through the power of data. You'll also hear the real-life stories of learners who have graduated from the Data Skills for All program and are embarking on new career pathways, creating a more inclusive, collaborative, and effective workforce. I'm your host, Mark Palmer. Please visit the Correlation One website for more about how data literacy transforms enterprises and tell your friends about the Data Humanized podcast. According to a survey from Ericsson, 69% of AI leaders foresee a continuous flow of new AI applications designed for internal use, driving significant process changes within their organizations. Despite this innovation, many companies still aren't preparing their workforce for AI. IBM reports that 60% of executives struggle to keep employees' AI skills up to date, and just 34% of organizations have AI skills training in place. So when data teams roll out advanced AI applications, how can leaders ensure internal teams drive measurable ROI? Today, we're speaking with Fernando Schwartz, Vice President of Data Science and Machine Learning Engineering at ADP. We'll explore how he fosters collaboration between his data science team, application development, and the broader organization. And he'll also share insights into how ADP empowers its workforce to grow digital skills while ensuring a high-quality customer experience. Please enjoy my conversation with Fernando. Hi, welcome. And I am joined today by Fernando Schwartz. He is the Vice President. He's the VP of AI for ADP. I had to practice saying that, lots of two-letter acronyms, but that's pretty cool. Most people know the company ADP. I thought we'd start off, though, Fernando, with maybe you telling us a little bit about why you joined ADP. I did learn that it has been named by Fortune magazine as one of the most admired companies for 18 years in a row. So, what inspired you to join them, and what do you love about ADP? Can maybe give folks a little bit of an overview for people that don't know them, other than the acronym.
Thanks so much, Mark. Yeah, so ADP actually stands for Automatic Data Processing. So, like, how many companies out there have been around for 75 years and have the word data in their name, right? Not too many. So, as a professional data nerd myself, this is something that naturally interests me. Getting into this space was very appealing because of the nature of the data that ADP has and the world of possibilities. Now, granted, this was a little bit before the generative AI revolution, if you like, but now even more so, right? Generative AI and AI in general, in everyone's mind, and what are the possibilities? How to leverage our data into bringing value is incredible. So that's kind of part of the appeal to me.
So I gotta say, I didn't tell you I was going to ask this kind of a question, but you're originally from Chile. You went to then Cornell with a PhD in math. What kind of tell a little bit about that origin story? Like, how did you land at ADP with that kind of mathematical background, and what was?
Yeah, that's yeah. It's I think that maybe it's becoming less common for people from academia to kind of hop into industry. Although my trajectory maybe is not the standard one. To your point, when I was growing up, I wanted to be a physicist. This was, I don't know why. Like, maybe it was like this dream of mine. And then when I went to university in Chile, at the University of Chile, I went into the engineering school. It's a little bit different system there, but you basically had a range of engineering options to choose from, plus something like physics and something else. And then I remember taking a class in physics. I'm like, I don't get this. I mean, I could not understand physics. I mean, and I couldn't understand at the level that I wanted to understand it. But on the other hand, math was like, wow, this is really cool. Sort of abstract math got me really hooked. And so I came to the US to pursue a PhD in mathematics. I work in an area called differential geometry, which is like what mathematicians like to refer to as abstract nonsense. And so, but it actually, it kind of closes nicely the loop to what I'm doing today. And I think that, we'll unpack that throughout this conversation. But in a nutshell, differential geometry is the language that is used by physicists, for instance, to describe the shape of objects like space-time. So when Einstein built his general relativity theory, he used this mathematical terminology to describe how this works. Anyway, so I stayed in math, and toward I stayed in academia for a while until I even became a tenured professor. But towards the end of my career in academia, this thing called data science started to pop in the radar, and I was like, "Well, that's cool, that's interesting." And so I started sort of peeking into that area in a specific topic called topological data analysis. Again, throwing some big words in there, but it seemed to be like super interesting blend of sort of this abstract nonsense and sort of applied stuff. And so I got like this kind of got the little bug in me, like, well, this is interesting, right? And at some point I felt, look, I have all of the science and none of the data kind of situation. So I said, okay, I took a leave from academia and I went into industry to online advertisement of all places, which seemed to be like the most high throughput sort of data science situation possible. So I work in a couple of firms in online advertisement, where the premise was to show the right ad to the right person at the right time. That's the premise of online advertisement, capturing that intent. And then an opportunity came up with a small startup in New York at the time. They were trying to give the right patient the right therapy at the right time. I was like, well, that's interesting. That's a nice parallel. And so maybe can we bring that technology into healthcare? And so that's kind of how I transitioned into healthcare, trying to kind of maybe more altruistic thing in there to be working on. So I stayed in healthcare for a while. And then the opportunity to join ADP came up. Sort of healthcare has all this potential, but I don't know, the technology hasn't kind of made inroads so much. And so they're still kind of playing catch up in many areas. So I thought that the opportunity to join ADP would kind of refresh my technological side a little bit. And so been with ADP for like 3 years now. And that's sort of a snapshot of my career. It hasn't not been a straight line. I could have never predicted that I would end up working at a company like this.
Well, it's so cool though, because it's also the academia and the background of figuring out the shape of things. To me, like that's gonna hit right with what we're talking about, right, with generative AI and finding patterns and data and shapes, trends and stuff. So it sounds it's really cool. We want to ask you about, like, so that's a diverse background from healthcare to advertising. So how does that bring us into ADP now, where how do you apply that diversity in the way of thinking about problems mathematically? And I love it. My new favorite term for the day is abstract nonsense. I'm going to try that out with my kids. So how does that apply to what you do and think about decisions at ADP?
Yeah, so I mean, I'll tell you a quick internal anecdote that happened to me maybe a year and a half ago or something like this. So someone said, "Hey, do we have access to vector databases?" This is something that it was maybe even 2 years ago, before ChatGPT. And I look at this person like, vector database? That doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about?
That's incredible timing, by the way, because now they're hot.
He was early. He was really early. I was like, vector databases? What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense, right? What do you mean like a vector database? What is this, right? Lo and behold, right? Incredibly relevant. And so what I'm trying to say is, like, there's all these concepts that, have like a firm footing in mathematics, which have to do with what's called embeddings. And there's a whole range of technologies that are like, if you look from a math point of view, it's like, yeah, it makes perfect sense. And now they're sort of making it out there to the mainstream technology. So it's absolutely fascinating. And sort of the understanding, to your point, of this geometry, shape of things, like how does that translate into technology? That's kind of what we're trying to figure out. I think, of course, Gen AI is still early. Like I was talking to someone yesterday at at a sort of after hours thing hosted by like a big VC firm. It's like you see some kind of a divergence in the technology world right now. There's this pure tech play firms that are like pushing the boundaries of what's possible with the technology, in the technology world, like the open AIs of the world, like the Anthropics of the world. They're focusing on like getting better and better at that. And then there's companies that are trying to say, okay, great, this technology is awesome. How do we use it? And it turns out that the space is so new that if you ask the technology people, how do you use their thing? They don't know. Like when we've spoken with like technology firms, hey, how do we use this stuff? They're like, yeah, well, I don't know. We're just trying to figure it out. So in a sense, being part of like what you would call a legacy company, but with the right leadership that where they have the right type of mindset and they're ready to start trying stuff out, we've made inroads that I would say are further down than any other company in our space. And even the tech companies don't know what we're doing because they've been focusing on developing the tools. We've been focusing on building with these tools. And so it's kind of a super interesting space where you can really feel you're driving progress in the application of these tools. So it's like ultra exciting to me to have this team. And I think that this excitement permeates throughout the team and whatnot.
Well, it's really what was very exciting about talking to you because there's so much talk about generative AI, but you are really doing some interesting stuff. So can we talk about that a little bit? Maybe the idea of this AI knowledge factory. And how you're starting to apply that, maybe take the abstract nonsense and make it not so abstract, not so nonsense, and actually more accurate, and all the things that I know you're going to start to explain, and maybe a little bit about. I'd be fascinated too as you go through a little bit about the tool chain. You mentioned vector databases, so I think technologists are very interested in. Like literally every day, it seems like there's another startup with another tool and another toy. But you're really doing some interesting applied problem solving with it.
Yeah, I think that one thing that comes up with like generative AI, and when people think about it, I mean it's kind of gimmicky in some sense. Like it is useful, but how exactly and whatever, right? And we're all like using ChatGPT, and but it's kind of a toy. So where's the actual value generating application? And I would argue that at least for now, right, what we're seeing today is that really offline processing of data turns out to be like super valuable. And so maybe I'll explain really quick what that means to us, right? So we are a service. So when our new CEO took office last year, one of the first, I think she had like some conversations with the analyst, and I think one of the first calls she got from analysts is like, "Hey, are you a tech company or a service company?" And she said, "Yeah, we're a little bit of both. We're service and technology." Now, I think that in my mind, with generative AI, you can kind of get a convergence of the two, because now the idea is to say, "Hey, can we move service into? Can we use generative AI to help with service?" That's kind of one of the big items, right? Big ticket items. And so if you think about how do you do that, ultimately you have to have generative AI be able to leverage the knowledge that your people have and that are using in the service context, right? Service means basically knowledge transfer from kind of your institutional knowledge into your users. And so one way to think about generative AI in my mind, like I keep kind of saying a little bit about this, is like it opens up a new channel of communication between our company and our clients. It's a new channel where we can sort of try to capture intent, and we're opening a new channel from our mind to their mind to try to help them do whatever they need to do. Like always thinking about our clients and what they need to do, right? And so, if you want to, make this channel efficient, and because it's powered by generative AI, you need to focus on the ability of generative AI to retrieve information properly from your knowledge bases. And what we have seen is that when we process our information and kind of make it what we call AI ready. So what I'm trying to say is like, if you take a generative AI model and you throw it at your database and say, hey, tell me, how do I solve XYZ problem? You will have some degree of success in doing that. But if you pre-process the data in a way, like in a format that the machine can read it easier, right? We've seen tremendous gains in quality. Still, we have humans in the loop in the middle, but there's massive gains. So I see like this processing of knowledge data which we do using generative AI. And we put generative AI on top of generative AI on top of generative AI to do that, right? That's kind of where I see right now is the bigger value, because this is work that would have taken like an army of people to do. Now we see we can iterate on this and get really good at sort of making content AI ready.
That Gen AI on top of Gen AI on top of Gen AI kind of creates what we talked about as an ontology or semantic layer. Could you give the non PhD Stanford version for the audience, for the guy that went to UConn over here? If you're visiting UConn, why it's important. I think, joking aside, it's a mathematical, technical concept, but it's I think
totally
studies showing that it's the key to making Gen AI, sort of more accurate and reliable.
So one of the key aspects, and I'll touch a few things there, and I don't want to go too long on this, but I mean, everything we talk about is kind of a rabbit hole, so I just need to kind of stop talking at some point to keep this more more fun. But let me just say, like the LLM on top of LLM and whatnot, right? Here's the idea. So you want to test different strategies, and then you want to evaluate because you want to iterate. So the question that comes is like, hey, how do you test strategies to do this and then evaluate without having to have a human necessarily do that, because you want to move quickly, right? And so when I say about LLM on top of LLM, one of the things that we're doing is like, hey, we're using LLMs to sort of reformat content, but we're also using LLMs to determine whether this new reformatted content is better than the previous formatted content. And this is using what's called LLM as judge. So first we use LLM as like a reformatter of content, and the other one as judge to see whether this reformatted content is going to be better than the previous iteration. So when you start doing that, then you can really iterate quickly because you can sort of automate everything, right? Now back to the ontology piece. How do you then enrich content? How do you make it more AI ready? And let me just say that one possible way to do this, besides sort of the actual formatting, is to add labels or tags to your content. And so adding tags means that sort of you have to figure out what are you talking about with content? How does that structure, right? So the idea is that you have content pieces, and maybe two pieces of content are tied to one another, and in which way they're tied, and etc. So this is kind of the word that you threw out there, the ontologies. And so I'll tell you a little bit of an example of an ontology. How does it come into play here? Ontology is a word that I think it's kind of starting to surface more in the space. It's pretty simple concept, really. And the most like an easy parallel for this is what's called a taxonomy. And I'll tell you, like an ontology is like a souped up taxonomy. So I'll explain in a second. But a taxonomy is what you think about when you go to the Museum of Natural History and you just look at like the line of the species, right? You see like vertebrates and whatever, right? So you can see the species line. Now you see like we like are somewhere in this taxonomy of species, and then there's, let's say, birds, right? So imagine you're an alien and you say, what's the difference between a human and a bird? And you give them this taxonomy. And then the alien will look at the taxonomy and say like, well, I don't know, they're spelled different. Human and bird, they spell different. This is like a clear difference. But there's nothing really much about the taxonomy in the taxonomy that tells you. But now, if you were to add to the human, to every node in the taxonomy, extra properties, like something like, hey, how many legs this thing has? How big are they? What's their average weight? Whatever, blah, blah, etc. Then you can compare nodes in the taxonomy much easier. You say like difference between a bird and a human. Okay, so bird has feathers, human has skin, the size, whatever. So basically, not only you have the nodes of the taxonomy with the labels, but also you have added elements to that, added, knowledge around that. And these are called properties. But what you're looking at now is an ontology. So an ontology is basically a taxonomy with added properties to it, something special about it. And so this is how we are sort of organizing our knowledge, right? What makes things different? What are the actions, etc. And you can think of, once we organize our knowledge, we take that and we slap that into content, knowledge bases, and the content that we have. This makes it much more easier to access for an LLM when there's tags and stuff like that. So tagging content is one way where we're making content there.
Yes. Okay. So yeah, that's great. It brings it all the way back to you're basically using this process and these tools and the concept of an ontology to make the abstract less abstract and less nonsense. That's literally being used in Gen AI as it's supporting knowledge and decision making by the humans in the loop, because it now has that. If you think of the people using it as an alien, that they actually understand the context and the data more and the relationships between them and among them. So that's pretty cool. So you're actually using, which I hadn't heard of before, using Gen AI to actually help you create that ontological.
Well, right. So we use Gen AI everywhere in all these processes, right? We want to be able to iterate quickly and scale fast, right? So traditionally, when you build ontologies, again, this is like very intensive human work that's required to build these things. We use generative AI to do that, and then the human in the loop piece is, and again, the way to think about it is like someone gives you a draft of something, right? Suppose that you have to write a document, someone gives you a draft, and you can make some small corrections. That's much easier than sort of writing from scratch. And I think that what we're seeing now is that our process is iterating on those drafts, so that the human intervention kind of gets narrower and narrower. But that's kind of where we're at, right? So we have really good quality drafts. We have a human that checks them and maybe corrects 10, 15% of that stuff, right? How do we narrow that gap to guarantee that the outcome is completely correct? Because we live in so the one thing about ADP, right, is that we run payroll. and so one thing that is critical for us is like, or put yourself in the situation, right? Someone were to tell you like, hey, we have a model that's 95% accurate. You'd be like, yeah, really cool. But that's gonna actually, your paycheck is 95% accurate. Not cool. Right? So we measure ourselves. Our standards are 100% or nothing, right? So we can't be 95% accurate on paychecks, right? And stuff like that, right? So you can imagine that we live in a space where that's why we need human in the loop. The human in the loop, we're going to fill the gap between whatever accuracy the machine gets us to 100%. And so the question is, how can we creep up the, more and more and more to perfect accuracy? And, that's a game we're playing.
So then let's talk about that last mile. So this is really about preparation, about, creating this, ontology. ADP is known for innovation in HR technology, right? So let's, draw that. So you're now developing this Gen AI capability. Talk about where those intersect, where digital and data skills, because the human a little bit, everyone needs to understand how to use even as LLMs get more accurate and you're doing that. So can you talk about that intersection from the human side as it starts to reach, and like how you think about upskilling those people, getting them familiar with using it, and maybe even just like to start like a use case, like how would, like, if I'm an ADP customer and you're doing my payroll, as an example, or any other example that would be relevant, where do you see AI sort of improving that process and customer experience as you talked about?
Absolutely. So, I was saying earlier, like, to think about generative AI maybe as a new channel, to reach our clients. And really, our customers, what we're trying to understand is get really quick at understanding their intent. So when they go into their products, we very quickly realize what they want to do and then help them get there. So remove friction. Use generative AI to remove friction. So an example of this is something that we have live today in our products. It's been live since December of last year, December 23. And it's got had some really good traction. And you don't even see it. It doesn't look or feel like generative AI. You don't even know about it. And to me, it's like the perfect application because it's all behind the scenes, right? But when you go in the search bar in our Run product, the search bar has seen so much evolution since generative AI, because this content now is being worked on by our technologies to be really quick at addressing our clients' questions through the search bar. And so, again, because of using in the backend generative AI techniques, we're able to answer questions that our clients were typing in the search bar without them having to call us for that. And you think about it, like, I personally, like, sometimes I need to make some changes on my cell phone plan or whatever, right? I mean, I kind of, if I could do like 3 clicks on the app, I'd be like the happiest person in the world. But then if it doesn't work, and I have to think, well, am I going to go on a chatbot experience or am I going to call someone? I think that's right. So that's the kind of situation we're trying to avoid here. Can we get our clients to click on 3 things and solve their problem, right? That's the ideal scenario. But in order to do that, we really need to be able to understand their intent. And that's kind of where we're investing, sort of we're aligning all this knowledge toward intent, sort of disambiguation, and like all these technologies kind of justified to figure out the intent and kind of what are the workflows tied to that intent. And we also have a tool called ADP Assist, which is in kind of a pilot program that is some kind of looks like a co-pilot where you have a conversational interface for other things like analytics. You can't really, I think it lends itself better for stuff like analytics where you want to draw or build reports and stuff like that. So for our clients, right, that are HR practitioners, they may want to build some, they may want to have some conversational interface for some of their needs, but whatever can be solved using search, like if we can do that's huge for us, because then avoids, like, it deflects the call and gets our clients, removes that friction. So that's kind of where our practitioners, right, are getting the most value here. But of course, we're kind of just getting started here. But we've seen tremendous, impact.
So do you find, so that's right. So by the way, when you talk about HR, you, I presume, are talking about the HR people using your tool to make sure payroll happens correctly, not necessarily internal ADP AR, which is right. I mean,
yeah. So we quote unquote eat our own dog food, as they call it, right? Drink our own champagne. I don't know. Sometimes heard this, like, but yeah, the HR system that ADP uses is also, we call ourselves client zero, right? So everything we do it ourselves first. So we also practice internally these things. But in principle, yeah, we're thinking about like, who are our clients, right? And our clients are sort of the HR administrators, right? HR leaders in the different companies we have. But also, so one of our biggest sectors is called the small businesses. These are small companies, right? These are like in mom and pop's shop. They don't have HR. they don't. They're like 5 people company. They don't have HR. They just want to get their payroll and their taxes, maybe some kind of benefits time, and something like that, right? So we're trying to help them too to self-serve through the HR piece of it, through this couple push buttons, right? Instead of having to like call and spend a lot of time on the phone.
So what kind of challenges have you faced at ADP, as you're trying to upskill the workforce in data literacy and AI there? And it's interesting, like you've almost answered the part of it by, in terms of making the AI almost invisible, right? But certainly there must be work you're doing to bring your whole, because I'm not sure how many tens of thousands or employees you have. There's a lot of people to wrangle to understand what AI is doing here, right?
Absolutely. So, look, I mean, we are 75-year-old company, right? And so, I think there are challenges in an organization that's been around for so long, and basically it's because of course, there's like a history of M&A that's tricky, right? But also the initial concepts where this thing was built out of, right, kind of may not be as applicable today, given the technology, in terms not in terms of the business value, but in terms of the technological choices, right? For instance, right, we have a big push to move stuff to cloud, but we're not fully there, right? There's still some stuff on prem, which makes sense, right? If you're thinking about like how does HR work, 50 years ago. But I think that one of the sort of issues that I encounter is that, and again, this is not unique to us. I think it's kind of a mindset change. It has to do with data, and the idea is that data is kind of one of those things where the sum of the parts is more than adds more than each of the individual numbers. Like 1 + 1 is 3 situation. against my best math, right? And the idea is that when you think about data coming from diverse sources, and you want to put it together, you could say, yeah, just here's the data, put it together, right? But the truth is that if each source thinks that their data is going to be used not only for their use case, but also to be part of a larger data repo, that mentality of thinking, okay, my data is mine, but it's also going to contribute to a bigger pile of data that can add value to the organization. This is something that is kind of a little bit, it takes a little bit of understanding how the value of the data, the value of this collection of data is greatly increased if each part not only provides their data, but they're also like really aware that they're going to be integrated. And I'll give you an example of what I mean by this is that, for instance, one of our, standardization, right? So we want to cater to each client, we want to make each client happy. So there is a little bit of a tension between, like, if you want to call someone, even in the level of job title, like, what does a job title mean, right? Is there a standard for a job title? Like, there is a governmental standard for job title, but really, when you look out there, there's so many job titles, and so many of them mean the same, but they're written differently and whatnot. So if you're thinking, hey, I want to build benchmarks around jobs and stuff like that, it's a reasonable thing, right? A company like us should be able to build benchmarks, and we do. But the idea of grouping data that hasn't been properly harmonized makes it very challenging then when you have too many job titles, for instance. So we work hard towards harmonizing and bringing those numbers down, but that's kind of one of the examples where if each business unit or each product were thinking of themselves, but also in the ecosystem, these are the challenges in like a large company, right? Because each product, again, there's this silo mentality, basically, right? So this is kind of how it plays out, silo mentality. So these are kind of challenges that you encounter in a large corporation. At the same time, large corporations like ours have like transformation offices. We know that is an issue, right? So there is also structures that are kind of out there. There are organizational structures that have been put out there in order to keep us up to date, and we've been successful at that. So I think it's an interesting space to play in, right? That's part of the appeal.
Talk about that last piece that you just mentioned, because of course we like to. One of the topics here is how do companies get better at bringing everybody along? Data humanized, and my gosh, 75 years of having data in your company name. That's some history to draw from. So you talk about your transformation office and organizational structure. How do you work with HR together to get? So clearly, you're not sending everybody to get a PhD in math. But there's got to be a way that you're helping people understand how you're using AI, for example, or even just data, like your points about, hey, how does my data that describes someone's title fit into the larger universe? So how do you educate people? I know we're both mentors in the Correlation One program, which is something you do personally. But what kind of advice would you give first to a company that hasn't been thinking about data for 75 years?
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't think it's like there's no silver bullet. There's not a magic thing here that you can do. But I mean, you can take a ton of steps toward it. So first of all, I think that with the age of generative AI, right, being sort of sparked by ChatGPT, now everybody's talking generative AI. So we have a lot, we have tailwind. Like this is like before generative AI was like. It felt like it was like a Quixote-esque thing, like, fighting the windmills, it's like what it felt like, you're going against the stream, right? So like no one really cared about AI. Suddenly, like everybody's talking AI. So I think we have a, very strong tailwind now. People want to get on board. One of the things that we did internally is we used a sort of kind of a chat type of tool, right? Internally, and we put together, it was a very modest at the time. We called it AI Community of Practice. So we have this AI Community of Practice. For instance, this is one of the challenges, right? And then this is where people make comments, whatnot. We organize talks every other week with internal and external speakers to talk about cool stuff. And this is kind of how I even think about keeping up to date, right? So I talk to startups, small companies all the time. right? And those that seem to be like, oh, this is really cool. Why don't you give a talk at the community of practice, see if you get some traction? Anyway, this thing started with like 100 people, before the generative AI boom. Now we're like at 1,500 pretty much, right? After Gen AI. So it's gone like 10x. Everybody's like super interested, all our leaders. So I think that, being top of mind from leadership, having events where we share the stuff and just honestly being super transparent, right? I think to me, transparency is like key. How do you do stuff, put it out there, writing, Confluence pages or whatever version you have, just opening it up, right, to people in as much as you can. We also have like a bunch of initiatives internally that, there was like a huge demand for building proof of concepts using generative AI. We're trying to provision that in a way that it's of course responsible, right? So we have like strong responsible AI guardrail committees and privacy and everything, because again our data is super sensitive. But we're building like generative playgrounds so people can access and toy around with this thing. So we're trying to make sure that that before people can build useful things with generative AI, they need to be acquainted with it. And so developers, are getting acquainted through using these tools. There are like my team. This team is closer to the technology, so we have more experience in this, and that's kind of we're driving a little bit more of the sort of the pilots and the GA products. But this is open for everyone now to hop on board, right? And but it is top of mind to our leaders. Like, hey, what is the workforce? Like we talk to our partners, our hyperscaler partners, and whatever. Like, hey, how do we keep everyone current? What is the workforce? Sorry, of the future look like? What does the workforce of the future look like for a company like ADP? I think no one knows. But what we do know is that, if we don't get people on board fast, that's probably a mistake. So we know what doesn't work. We don't know exactly what's going to work, but we need to get people on board and start moving in that direction. But it's a fascinating space to be in, to try to educate and just keep it interesting.
The work you do with the weekly meetings that have gone to 1,500, I think that's like, it's such a simple thing, but I have seen so many companies just say, we get together and we talk about it. We have good speakers, we keep it interesting. We invite everybody. Now, you did say you invite everybody. That's outside of IT, presumably, right? That's
anyone can join.
Marketing people, and anyone can come. And it's not. How do you keep the conversation cool for people, to get that wide variety? Of course, to your point about tailwinds, what you describe with a smart search bar is like, thank goodness, I think everybody kind of gets that, right? They're all in whatever their, you name your chat search engine. So how do you keep it? How do you think about that curriculum and making it available for everyone, or accessible to everyone, or understandable for everyone?
We're at a point in time where all these tech companies, like even the hyperscalers, are like just they see there's like a cash cow, right? And so everybody's trying to like throw stuff at you so that you work with them, right? So all these companies are offering training at the different levels, and so we just take it all, right? So like, yeah, go train my people, right? Have people sign up and just like have them become like, it's really, I think if you're someone at ADP that wants to get into this space, like in as much as you can in a company like ours, right? You can go. You have the capability. But to your point, like this channel, like many times the commentators are like legal team. There are a lot of legal team there, right? And but the legal team is like it's interesting. Before generative AI, like the amount of meetings I had with lawyers was like only when I'm in trouble, or only when we may get in trouble, right? And I can tell you a little bit more about how that looks like for a company like ADP, because there are regulations around EOC that we play in a world where EOC is relevant. So there are we're like highly regulated stuff out there, but that's kind of the conversation I used to have in the past. Now it's like everybody's worried about like responsible AI, guardrails, safety, security, privacy, right? And so we have our legal team like in a ton of meetings, and they're getting educated about generative AI. It's really fascinating. It brings such a different perspective to this technology, right? When you're trying to like speak legalese in these tech meetings, it's just like it is really sort of mind expanding. Like this kind of it's really opening new channel also between the company itself, right? It's not just to their clients, but the fact that we have generative AI in the mix now, we have so much opportunity to collaborate with colleagues that we otherwise wouldn't have. So I mean, it's a fascinating time, for to say the least.
Well, I'm fascinated you brought up the legal point, because I was just writing something about a new report from McKinsey and Company that profiled generative AI leaders. And one of the observations that I thought was like, so it stuck out so oddly, was that company they identified this small cohort of companies that are now attaching about 10% of their EBITDA to the use of AI. So that's like a high performing cohort. But they found that those people are 2 to 3 times more likely to involve legal earlier in the process than laggards. And I'm like, really? But it's exactly what you just said. In a way, I think it's actually quite. I call it visionary. I don't think there's not a lot of people that would say, "Wow, yeah, let's call the lawyers up first to get them involved with our AI stuff." But to your point, I think they are raising one of the better presentations I've attended recently was from lawyers about IP rights, creative rights. I mean, creative use rights, which are it's a really a fascinating intersection of legal that you really should think about before you build something.
Totally. So we and again, not to advertise or whatever, but at ADP we have this process by which we provision access to generative AI tools. It gets you need to get the okay from 4 different teams, right? So we have these 4 different sort of areas that are pulled in to approve stuff, right? So, but the concepts, right, around these guardrails are safety, security, privacy, and accuracy. These are the 4 concepts. So safety is around hey, is this thing gonna have offensive language and stuff like that, right? You wouldn't want to get in trouble there. Security is malicious actors trying to break into this thing. Are they gonna be sort of trying to hack into it? And for that, we sort of involve the security office, GSO, Go Security Office.
Yep.
Privacy, and you have all the lawyers say, is the data that being accessed the relevant data? Are we to have direct controls around the data? How we're gonna safeguard that? And last but not least is accuracy, which is kind of tied to more my team. How do you measure that this thing? Okay, you have something out there, does it work? So these are the 4 sort of pillars as of today in terms of generic guardrails, and this is sort of when we talk about responsible AI. These are the 4 areas that we think about, and again, we have people examining. I mean, it starts a little bit more lightweight when in the POC stages, but as this POC advance into GA, sort of pilot and GA, we get more serious around the governance piece of how generative AI makes it out there. And to your point, legal is, I mean, they have a new, I don't know how these guys can handle, right? But whatever they were doing before this, now they have a massive new work stream tied around generative AI that they have to deal with.
Well, but I think the way that the McKinsey report said it was that it's about shifting left in terms of process, and I think for lawyers, the ones that I know work with, will always tell you it's way better. I mean, they really don't like just the build to fix problems, right? It's just a little bit of involvement or proactive up front. I mean,
totally, the shift left sentence, now everybody's using it whenever they want to do something, right? They just say well, we're shifting left, and you're okay, we have to do this. It just became the mantra.
Yeah,
it's like a wild card.
Yeah.
In Uno's, shift left gets you, it opens every door you need. Shift left.
Yeah, but it's funny. I'm glad you brought it up, because it hadn't been something I had heard in the context of lawyers before. Usually people say avoid lawyers, shift them as far out right as you can.
No.
Never see them, but for AI, I think it's
we need to keep them really close, because at the end of the day, they hold a lot of keys to this. And they need to be. I mean, in fairness, they are safeguarding your IP, to your point, right? They're safeguarding a ton of the whatever you're building with generative AI. You gotta go read that fine print of the models that you're using, because you don't know where the data is. What if sometime down the road someone comes with a claim, right? Hey, you're using this AI that was trained on my data and you're making money out of it. You owe me money, right? So basically, this could be an issue, right? So we need to be super super careful. Not only safeguarding our data, but also looking at the contract terms. Yeah.
Fernando, this has been great. Let's do our 3, 2, 1. And we need a version 2 or a part 2 at some point. There's a bunch of things that I think we could drill on on. But we'd like to wrap up with this 3, 2, 1, which is kind of the 3 big takeaways from your talk. Some fun about the the two is the two books or podcasts or things you would take to a desert island. Doesn't have to be math or AI related, by the way. I think I mentioned. And then a favorite quote, either from someone else or that you like to share with your team when you're talking about, the use of data, and AI and what you're doing is in the context of we don't know what the future is going to look like, what the future workforce is going to look like. So, yeah, 3, 2, 1. Three big takeaways, 2 books, favorite quote.
All right. So 3 takeaways. I guess from what we've discussed, so generative AI really, it takes a village. Honestly, it takes a village to get it out there, but it's all deeply anchored on your leadership or the leadership having like that, really deep belief that this is going to work and the investment, like the backing for it, right? So if you're an organization where there's no perception of value behind this, it's not going to fly, and that would be like a big mistake. So that would be like the first one, like get your leaders to understand the value here. 2, I think that again, it's a time where it's like a market, I think of like this market with like tons of offerings, right? A gazillion products, a lot of shining stuff, right? Try to focus on, what really makes sense. Again, each company will have their own thing, but for us, it makes sense to focus on like the high quality content and sort of the offline, using the capabilities of generative AI for offline processing has proven to be like really good. And so we've stuck with it and like take this to the next level. And I guess the last one, just keep open-minded because the space is evolving so quickly. So I remember hearing something like, you always have to plan for the next thing. It's like, when you had, the OS, right? When you think about like phones, that, when you build something, plan for the next OS release. So try to imagine what is the next one going to look like and see that's going to help you drive your conversation. That would be my maybe takeaways. But that's how we didn't cover that too much today. In terms of 2 books or podcasts, I would take the Desert Island. So, I'm assuming that this desert island has no Wi-Fi access, right? So there's 2 things that I was thinking about. There's this Quanta magazine it's part of like the Simmons Foundation. They have like incredible articles around science and mathematics, and I just love to read that stuff. So it's sort of, if you want to keep up to date with science, math, Quantum magazines are really. I don't work for them. Disclaimer. I just nothing. It's just like I just really think they're really incredible. And also like there's a book that I think it's like the thickest math book you can ever think of. And when I was in grad school, I tried to read parts of it, and I just found it impossible. So I would just take this book. It's called Geometric Measure Theory by this guy Federer, not the tennis. He's just like a thick, like, I think this will keep me sort of true and not going like when I, in the desert island, when you're going crazy, just go try to figure this out and keep my mind off of that, like reading this impossible math book. I guess the favorite quote is one thing that I tell the team, like my team and maybe other teams out there are really focused right now on sort of delivering, but I've been through some pretty fast growth and expansion phase. And so the challenges that we have had is like, how do you grow? How do you expand the team and do it in a way that still works? Like how do you, like hyper growth, right? Kind of a startup kind of problem. And to that, I'm going to quote Travis May, who is the former CEO of LiveRamp and DataVant. Is like a really, really cool dude that I have had the fortune to interact with a few times. But he said something like, hey, when you're hiring people, you need 3 things. You need them to be nice, smart, and know how to get stuff done. So this is kind of what I'm, talking to my team. Have collaborative, nice individuals that are like incredibly smart and know how to get stuff done. This is like the recipe for success, I think, in general in building teams, which is something that I really, really are, very, conscious about when growing. So that's, I'll leave you with that.
I love it. It's a great way to leave it, especially including the nice part. I mean, because to your point, especially now with all the collaboration that's required around what we just talked about, right? I mean, you have to, you got to work with people, and it's better. It's a lot more fun to work with people that are nice.
Absolutely.
And smart and getting stuff done for sure. So Hey, Fernando, this has been great talking to you. Learned a lot. I have to say, I usually say that I learned a couple books that I'm going to go grab and read. I might go get Quantum Magazine. I'm not sure about the thickest book on geometric. That one,
So if
that
you
one
see if you see a yeah, if you see a yellow book, a yellow math book from Springer, it means it's pretty hardcore. This stuff, just to give you an idea, right?
yeah. I think I'll start with the magazine version first.
yeah. I wouldn't. I don't. This is not for the faint of heart and skin. Like you need to know like so much abstract nonsense to get into this book.
Right.
But again, it's kind of one of those things that I'll never get into it unless I'm in a desert island. So
it's inspirational. There are some books that I just love to read so slowly, more like the Edward Tufte books on visualization design. Some of my favorites. I'll like read one page, put it down, and think about it. So you've at least inspired me to think of some things, some books that I would take on the island without Wi-Fi.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's been like absolutely awesome to talk to you, and I'm happy to do anything follow up. The Correlation One guys, I think they're an amazing team, and their mission and vision is commendable. And if there's anything I can do to help, count me in.
That's great. Nice, smart, fun. Good guy, good people, good program, and big part of it. So thanks so much for that.
Thanks, Mark.
We closed the weekly segment we call The Big Number. We heard from Fernando about ADP's ongoing efforts to build innovative new AI tools for its workforce while maintaining a fantastic customer experience. Fernando reminds us that the key to innovation isn't just mastering new tools, it's understanding how to apply them appropriately throughout the organization. ADP is proving that companies can walk this tightrope successfully. So this week, our big number is 95%. That's the percentage of customer interactions that best-in-class AI leaders will fully automate with AI, according to McKinsey. Enterprise leaders must ensure that workers have the AI skills necessary to achieve this high benchmark. To do that, we need ubiquitous data literacy. We need data humanized.